Has Joe ever whacked anybody?
That's a good question. What was the next question?
Welcome back to the Goodfellow Podcast. Today we're privileged enough to be able to talk again with Mr. Joe Barone, whose initial interview left us with many answers, but even more questions. Welcome back to the show, Joe. How are you today?
Hey guys, how's everybody?
Good, good. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me back.
In your first interview, we had a great conversation and heard some really interesting stories. But in this one, we wanted to go over some of the things you weren't able to really get to or elaborate on. And starting with that story you're going to tell about the days of Al Capone and how you were involved, what are your ties to that, and kind of, our viewers are very interested in the Al Capone days. So go ahead and start with that.
Okay, so I believe I said that my family on my mother's side goes back to the Al Capone days, which is true. And also, it happened a long time ago. It's kind of hard to explain, but I'll do it the best way I can. So my mom, her sister, which is my grandmother, had a sister who was married to, we called him Gumbada Giuseppe. His brother was actually working for Al Capone. Al Capone was, of course, in Chicago, but the bootlegging business back in those days traveled all the way through all places to Pennsylvania, where my family was also from Italy, and they moved to Pennsylvania. What happened was, we have a picture of him too, just so you know. He's all dressed up in a suit. Back then, he had a diamond stick pin. It looks like it's out of a real picture, but it is. Anyways, he, for some reason, something must have happened with them, with the Al Capone or whatever, but they killed him. Now.
And what year was this?
I guess it was around the bootlegging years. I don't know exactly when. It was probably as it was just about to come to an end. But they murdered him. For whatever reason it was, I don't know. But his brother, who was, my grandmother's sister's husband, used to have a barbershop. That's all he was a barber, a little small guy. So his brother bought him the barbershop, and he used to just cut hair. Well, some guys went over there from Al Capone, and they threatened him. And they said, we want the money. And he really didn't know where the money was about anything his brother was doing. Wasn't that kind of guy. Well, sure enough, they said, look, we're going to come back here by the end of the week. You better have the money for us. Well, went home, told the family. They were scared. They packed up everything, and they're getting ready to move. He goes to the barbershop. They show up, and they said, okay, we're here for the money. He says, okay, I got it in the back. He comes out in the back with the shotgun. He kills them.
Oh, my God.
I think he left one guy living, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, they moved from, I believe it was Johnstown, Pennsylvania. They moved to Mamaroneck, New York. They stayed there a little while, and then they moved to New Rochelle, New York, where I was born, as I said previously. And he opened up another barbershop there. So everything was kind of going smooth. But don't you think 20 years later, some guy comes into the barbershop, one guy, and started shooting at I call him my uncle. He's really not my uncle, but they started shooting at him. So he ducked like this.
Did he ask him who he was before he started shooting?
No, they knew.
They already knew?
Yeah, they know. They pretty much got the target.
Gotcha.
But he ducked like this, and the bullet hit his finger, but I don't know the way it hit his finger or whatever, there was a lot of blood squirting. He thought he killed him. He ran out of the place. And matter of fact, that's documented in the paper, in the New Rochelle. I don't know if it was the Standard Star or whatever the heck it was.
Wow.
But my cousin actually is the one who told me that whole story. I never knew because I used to ask my mother. I would see him walking as he got older. What happened? He wound up getting Alzheimer's disease. He had walked with a cane a little bit, and he was short, small guy. And I say, hey, goodbye to Giuseppe. And he says, I tapped him on the shoulder. He got scared. He said, who are you? What do you want? He was like so scared. And I felt bad for him. And I talked to my mother, but she never really told me the story until my cousin told me the story years later. And that's how I found out.
Right. So did anybody else you knew, were they intimately involved with the Capone guys?
That was on my mother's side. My father's side, like I said, that was a different side of the tracks. Right. He had his own connections there.
Right. In your first interview, you mentioned a little bit about how the loyalty isn't what it seems within the mafia.
Yes.
I wanted to dive into that a little more. What types of things did you see or experience that make you kind of say that specifically?
Well, basically, it's some of it was jealousy. I mean, I know it sounds like they're supposed to be together, but they're not. And I think I touched a little bit on in the first base in the first podcast with you. And you could be smarter than the next guy, maybe come up with a better scheme. Maybe the boss likes you better than he likes the other guy. The whole thing is it's all about greed. Matter of fact, there was a line in The Godfather Part Two, I think, and so in that movie, I think they shot at Michael Corleone, and so he gets in the room with Tom Hagen, and he says, "Listen, Tom Hagen thinks it was one of his own guys going against him, because that's how brotherhood was. You know, he thinks right away it's his own guys, but."
Right.
He said to him, he says, "Listen, these men, they're businessmen, and their loyalty is based on that, because it's always about the money. So it's really not about the brotherhood like they try to pretend it is, or they try to let everybody think, oh, look, wow, it's nice to have a bunch of guys who are all solid, we're together, but they're not solid. If they were so solid, there was part of that other line was, he said, my father always taught me, try to think like people around you are thinking. He says, on that basis, anything is possible. The loyalty is like this. Here it is. You sign up for something, and there's other people who went to prison, and you sign up for something, and yeah, you do your time like a man. You go to jail, but there was somebody else that on YouTube who said the minute they get the handcuffs on, they all of a sudden they find God. Well, that's not really 100% true. I mean, there are some guys like that, and most of the time the mafia knows who can take a bid, who could take a punch, who's good at one thing, who's good at another. But listen, I know plenty of guys like my friend Dominic. He did plenty of years in prison, never opened his mouth about anything. Matter of fact, he was ratted on.
This is Dominic.
Sicali, my friend Dominic, yeah.
With the Mafia Roundtable.
In Mafia Roundtable, yes, that's correct. So he's not ready to rat on anybody, okay? But my whole thing is like this, and I mentioned this, I think, in our last podcast, too. You had Sylvester Stallone playing the Tulsa King. The guy does 25 years. They tried to kill him in prison because they didn't think he'd do the whole 25 years, okay? Now, he's doing everything he's supposed to do. They try to kill him in there. Now he comes home. Now he's got to kick up $5,000 a week. The guy's like in his 70s, or like late 60s, early 70s, whatever it is. Just did 25 years without blinking an eye, okay? And he said, I married into this. Let me see if it married me back. You couldn't have like a house waiting for him, maybe some money to his side. His wife and daughter was left out in the street like they were nothing. You mean tell me, well, they pull him up into a mansion in Long Island. It's a palace. This guy comes home, he's got nothing.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not saying you have to do anything for them, because you sign up for something like a cop. He signs up to go out there and protect the law, or whatever the case may be. And if he gets killed on the job, all right. But most of the time, they have a certain pension or a certain life insurance thing. So if he gets killed on the job, his wife, somebody gets something out of it. Right. Most of the time. What happens to a wise guy when he does that? Why is he forgotten about? Listen, loyalty is one thing, and I'm all for that. Loyalty is a good thing. But why should I be loyal to somebody who's not loyal to me? Look, my father went away to prison. My mother, me, and my sister were on welfare. Back in those days, they had the food stamps. It was like real money.
The Mafia didn't take care of you guys when he went to jail?
Not one person came over and gave us an envelope or said, listen, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be all right. Your husband's good or whatever. Nothing. Okay? My father actually went away, and this is a lot of people. I kind of didn't want to talk about it that much because it brings up a lot of bad feelings about my father, because I lost him. And my father ran away to another country. All right, to evade the law. Yes, they were going to arrest him for murder. A guy, Frank Santora, who was in Scarsdale, New York, was testifying for the government. It was accurate. They suspected him, and then they gave my father the order, and he killed him. And they found him hanging in his garage. But the last people that were with him was my father and somebody else. I won't mention the other guy's name because he's still alive. But my father ran away, And they supposedly, I don't know why they went out there to kill him or whatever, but the FBI told me that they killed my father. Yeah.
Were you upset with the FBI that they didn't tell you sooner so you could have prevented it? That they didn't, they kind of just sat by, watched it happen, then told you after the fact?
That's actually a good question because what a lot of people don't know is that even though there is a book, The Chin, from Larry McShane from the Daily News wrote a book. I'm in a few chapters of that book. And the FBI did come to my father's house. I lived with him at that time. They knocked on the door and they gave him his card. They said, listen, we have reason to believe that there's a hit out on your life. We intercepted a phone call that we got to get rid of JB. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. I never found that out either.
And they never told you who made the phone call?
They never said anything to my father. They said, if you want to come in, they gave him the card. They said, if you want to come in and talk to us, we have to, by law, notify you that somebody's out to kill you.
When they say come in and talk to us, does that mean offer him protection, return for information?
Of course. They want to act like they're your buddy now all of a sudden.
Right.
They're out there trying to wiretap you, tell all your friends that you're no good, or they... I think in our last podcast, you said something to me about, do they really go after your girlfriends? They've told girlfriends or wives that your husband's got a girlfriend on the side. We have pictures on them. We have letters. They try to ruin the whole family unit because, let's face it, when you go away to prison, you're forgotten about.
Right.
It's very hard for people outside to say, let's send Joe a few dollars, or let's write him a letter. Let's let him know that he's still wanted. It's almost like being shelved. All of a sudden, and shelved means, I don't know if a lot of viewers don't realize this. I forget that I'm talking to people who probably don't know everything about the life. When you're shelved, it's like you're out of the life for a little while. You can't earn no more money with the wise guys. You can't do anything without their permission anymore.
What would cause someone to be shelved?
It all depends on. There's some real rules, of course, but it's almost like when you do something out of the scope of the mafia, what all their rules are. But their rules are only.
Can bend with how much money you're bringing.
Yeah, don't do this. Oh, but I can do it though. You understand?
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
I got you.
We don't do drugs, and we don't sell drugs. But you give the guy an envelope, and he doesn't ask where you came from. He knows you're selling drugs, but he don't care. You just gave him X amount of dollars, and they don't care. It's very hypocritical.
Right.
There's certain things, even certain things you can't do to your wife, but you could do to your girlfriend. There's so many crazy things. Oh, you can get killed for going out with somebody else's wife or fooling around with her. That's a no-no. And that kind of rule, I like that rule. I think that's good. Why do you want to look at somebody else's wife and have lust for her? What's wrong with you? There's 1,000 other girls out there. But some people take a chance, and then they get killed, and they wonder why. Well, you know why. I always used to love those signs in the beach. Don't swim with sharks. And somebody goes in there and they get bit, and they go, what happened? What's the matter? You didn't read the note? I mean, it's a freaking sign right there. Right. So some people are stupid. But loyalty is, look, I did say things about people in the mafia. I hated the mafia when I heard that's what happened to me, to my father. And all the stuff that I believed, like my father did. But what happened is, I have friends that I can't mention their name. I think I might have said this in the last podcast. I did things with them, and they know, and they couldn't believe it. One guy actually even said to me, we can't figure you out, Joe. You told on these people, but you never said anything about us. And I just told the guy, you're my friend. We grew up since we're 7 years old. What am I going to tell on you?
Right.
And he just nodded his head and blinked at me, and he knew. He understood. But I'm still a rat no matter how you look at it. But I have to give a lot of credit to people who did what they did. Some people, not everybody. Like you did things. Dominic had called me up to the prison where he was at while he was cooperating. He wanted to explain why he did what he did. And to be honest with you, I believe every word he said. I understood every word he said. And it was very telling about everything that I'm saying now. the betrayal. Not for nothing. I don't want to put words, and Dominic can tell you himself, so I'm not going to speak for him. But I definitely agree with what he said. And I have to give him a tremendous amount of respect, just like I would with somebody who was really honorable. I had a lot of respect from in the street, and I have even more respect from the way he did and handled himself. So I don't say everybody's like him, just like in the Mafia. He's the type of person I would have did anything for and with, and I pretty much did. And a lot of the stuff that you heard, we're going to put somebody in the trunk and stuff like that we were going to do, but lucky the guy never showed up. I was willing to do that because of who he was in our relationship.
Right.
But not everybody in the Mafia is like that. They'll cut your throat. Same thing when I was with the FBI. Look what the FBI did to me. Okay? I worked for the FBI for 18 years.
Why did they turn on you after 18 years?
Well, that's a good question, too. When I was in prison, I think it was it my second bid or my first bid? I kind of get them a little mixed up. But there was an article in the Time Life magazine, and it was right on the thing, what they call informant shopping. Now, I never heard of that expression. But I read the article, and it's agents who go after the other agents, people that are cooperating with them. Now, like here, the FBI has certain squads. Excuse me, let me just finish this espresso so I don't spill it.
Absolutely.
Like I said last week, it's good to be Italian.
For anybody else that's would like to be a guest on the podcast, we provide free espressos, seltzer waters.
And believe me, it's good. It's worth it.
Oh, it's good. Sambuca in there too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Listen, to me, without the Sambuca, the coffee's nothing. But what I was saying before was, I think it was the way they explained the informant shopping. Agents go after other agents' people who are cooperating with them because they're more powerful. In the FBI, there's certain squads. Like in my place, there were certain squads. They were like C5 and one squad with the Genovese family, another one with the Lucchese family. I was with the Barone family, obviously. But because they were powerful more than the handler I worked with was Vincent Pizzuti. I worked with him for 18 years. He retired after 20 years. So 18 years I practically helped him. I made his whole career, okay? To be honest with you. I was his star, whatever you want to call me. Anyways, they came after me even after I served them the way I did. And I have records, and I said I'll bring them, but I had to bring them on Mafia Roundtable first because that was the promise I made. Of how on board with the FBI I was, how all my information was accurate, and I never had to wear a wire on anybody because that's how good I was with my memory, faces, times, places, dates, everything. But did they protect me? Did they really care about me? That's why I told you about my friend who I thought I could trust. God forbid anything happened to me. I told him what I was doing. He kept his mouth shut. Pete Savinello was my friend at that time. And I figured maybe he would try to find out if, God forbid, I got killed on the job. Well, they had an informant, a guy that I was hanging around with. I used him he was a thug. He was a black guy. And I used him to keep up my street cred, you know. He was beefy, you know, he looked tough, rough, scary to most people. But some people said to me, what are you doing with a guy like him? But anyway, I hung around with him. It just helped a little bit that I had all kinds of different levels of connections. Well, he got caught doing something, and he was an informant, but his whole record of informant was done. Matter of fact, the police department didn't even want nothing to do with him.
Why is that?
Because he was a liar, he was a bullshitter. He just did things like that to actually, how can I say it? Just to try to earn a paycheck. You know what I'm saying? So that's what he did. But anyways, P.S., he informed on me. I brought him something that really was not going to happen. That was proven at my trial. And also, it was just kind of weird. But he actually told the truth at my trial a lot. About 90% of it was true. And it was actually all for me because he didn't know how to even lie as good as somebody else would have that was trying to testify for the government. He actually told the truth.
Right.
and which was good. That's how it was one of the reasons why I beat my murder for hire case. But they wanted me because they were the Genovese C5, I think it was C5 squad. They were with the Genovese, and because of my connections with the Genovese family, because of my father, that's why they wanted to steal me. 18 years, a perfect record. Nothing ever went wrong on my watch. Nothing ever was false. No, nothing. Okay, I didn't get no money. They gave me money like if I spent $10, $1,000, $2,500 here or there, whatever it was, they gave it back to me. But that's it. I never got paid for doing all of this. I wanted to find out who killed my father. That was my sole thing for doing what I did. Okay, now you can say I was right or wrong or whatever. I could care less. All I know is you want to talk about me or you like me or not, why don't you just walk in my shoes? Let's see how you feel if your father gets killed. Maybe you don't love your father. I don't know. I loved my father. Right, wrong, I know he was a gangster. I know he killed people and stuff like that. I don't care. He's my father. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's not up for debate. But he was my father.
Right.
Just like Michael Francis, his father was Sonny Francis, a very famous guy. His father was his father, and that's it. And his son was his son. And that's the way it goes. But they arrested me on false charges. They just wanted to... They couldn't ask me to help them. Why? That I don't know. But they wanted to have pressure on me to arrest me on false charges, which I actually beat them in trial. And a matter of fact, I'm in the law books. I'm on the Fourth Amendment for illegal search and seizures, which to win that case in that alone is a miracle in itself. Nobody wins an illegal search and seizure. But Judge Buchwald, who was my judge, saw through the lies, and she said it on the stand in the court, and it's in the transcript. She knew the agent guy was lying.
Wow.
Could you imagine that? She said that. It's in the transcripts. And she gave me a whole book of how I won that case. And once I took that thing, it was good. But the FBI are more dirtier, and I can testify this because I was with them for 18 years. It's not like I worked for them for a year or 18 months. They're more dirtier than the mafia. Why? Okay? I'll tell you. Because they pretend they're the good guys, but they are the bad guys. The end justifies the means to them. That's all it means. That's it. They don't care how to get it. That's why I said they'll tell your girlfriend that you got another girlfriend. They'll tell your wife you got a girlfriend.
Right.
They don't care. They do anything to hurt you so that you would have no position but to go with them. Now, I was connected a little bit before I went away on my first bid, before I cooperated with them. But I still was alone. And after my father died, I hated everything and everybody. And that was it.
Right.
So I joined them, and that's how it was.
I understand. So, does anything that you say on camera about the FBI or even about the mafia, does it concern you, or are you worried that somebody might not like what you're saying and try to come after you or anything like that?
You know something? I never testified against anybody. I never took the stand. I don't even know the extent of what information I gave to the FBI, what they actually really did with it, because it wasn't like I wasn't privy to that. I just gave information.
Right.
Concerned? Listen, I'm not the toughest guy around, but I could pretty much see if somebody's coming after me. Win or lose, I'm not going to go down that easy. I never was. I used to have friends of mine. They called me late at night one time, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had to go to a club. And it was the old Marty, and it was the old Lollipop back in the days. My friends called me up. I was with my girlfriend. I answered the phone, and they said they had a problem. Why'd they call me? These guys can handle themselves. But because I went down there, packed, ready to go, I used to have I had a long leather jacket, and in my leather jacket, I took the pocket out, so I would walk in with my hands like this, and I had it where as I lifted up the gun, the jacket would fold over, and I was able to shoot, so no one could see it, because that's the kind of guy I was.
Right.
I was serious, and I'm serious now. What I'm going to say on this podcast, and any other podcast I'm on, is the truth. I had no reason to lie when I was at my trial. I got no reason to lie now. You can like me or not like me, and you can believe me or not believe me. That's up to you. But some things in this life are true whether you want to believe them or not. Just like as if in this country they say you're innocent till proven guilty. I'm sorry, that's not the truth. If I was innocent till proven guilty, why was I arrested? Why couldn't I get bail? It's just these kind of things like that really turn you off about the real truth of it. But nobody knows. That's the secret. You remember there's an old saying about the devil's biggest trick was to not make you believe that he was really the devil or that he really existed. Well, nobody knows about what the FBI is unless you work with the FBI. Nobody knows what the mafia is like unless you're in the mafia. I mean, nobody knows how to cut hair unless you took lessons. It's just what it is. Like I said, some things are true whether you want to believe them or not.
Right. So you're not worried at all about, people coming after you or anything like that?
I've been looking over my shoulder for the last 18 years when I was working for the FBI undercover in the mafia. I was like almost a spy if you really think about it. And I've been looking over my shoulder since I've been out of this whole thing, since 2009 and 2010 when I was exposed. I'm always going to look over my shoulder. I'm always going to be aware of everything. I might wind up like with Alzheimer's, like like Umbada Giuseppe, and maybe still always look over my shoulders because that's the thing he remembered, even though he's losing his mind. But worried? Look, I'm not going to say that I'm not scared of nobody and all of that kind of stuff. That's kid games. Listen, in this life, it's good to be afraid of certain things. Just don't panic. And I will not panic if somebody comes to get me. And I can handle myself when the time comes. Thank God.
Right. We had a viewer question that was sent in to our email.
Okay.
If anybody else watching this would like to submit questions to ask, any of our guests or ask Joe or anything, you can send it to our email at goodfellowpodcast@gmail.com. So we had a viewer, Brentley D220, excuse me, says, "Has Joe ever whacked anybody?"
That's a good question. What was the next question?
Understood. Well, we could talk about Pippi's Deli. You mentioned Pippi's Deli was kind of like a hot spot for wise guys.
Right, I didn't say the name. Yeah, Pippi's. I told you earlier because not that I didn't remember it, but Pippi's Deli's was the deli that I told you I met a lot of the wise guys and I served them coffee. I think I was like 11 or 12 years old before my father did one of the longest bids I think he ever did. Pippi's Deli was named after a guy who was in the Lucchese family. He was a captain, was Rudy Pippolo. And a lot of people know him as Uncle Rudy for all us guys from the Bronx and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, Dominic and I talk about it, but there was a big chair in one of the clubs that it was like a big king chair. And it was this guy, Fat Mongo, used to sit on it. And obviously they called him Fat Mongo for a reason. That was the only chair he could fit in. But Rudy was he was a drug. He dealt drugs back in those days too, even though they say we don't do it. He was, as a matter of fact, they were doing heroin back in those days. He gave me on the 4th of July. He gave me like a $50 bill. I was 12 years old. You know what $50 is back in those days? Okay, I'm 62 years old now, so think about it. So my father said to me, "Don't forget to split that with your sister." I said, "Sure, Dad." I never gave my sister half. I kept the whole thing. Anyways, he was like what they call the tail end of the French Connection, which was a big heroin organization back in those days before the Pizza Connection ever came out, which was with Italian people. Obviously pizza, okay? But Rudy was a type of guy. He was rough though. Like he had that real deep voice and a little raspy. He was a real kind of like an animal, tough. He was crazy, but he was the captain.
Right.
I believe it was the Lucchese family. As a matter of fact, if you opened up a club, like a card playing place or a restaurant of some kind without even asking him permission, he used to say, "Okay, guys, who's that place over there? What's going on? Who's that over there?" "Well, we don't know." "All right, get the marshmallows." You know what the marshmallows mean, right?
What's that mean?
There's going to be a fire.
Oh,
he wants to burn the place down because if you don't get permission from him, he's burning the place down to the ground. That's it. So he would make fun like you were going to have like a barbecue out there while the place was burning down.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, no, he was wild.
What are some more kind of like phrases that they would use like that? Like, "Oh, time to bring the marshmallows out,"
It all depends. Most of the time, they wouldn't even have to say nothing. They say, Joe, you got to do that thing. You know what I mean?
Okay,
Or
you're
like,
supposed to know.
yeah, well, you know, like, or like, they wouldn't even say a phrase. They say, hey, Joey, you know that guy? And that means he's got to go. It's just little things, we don't even have to talk half the time. Hey, Joey, how's that car? Is it all right? You know what I mean? That's all it would take. So it was that kind of thing.
I got you.
Yeah.
So earlier you mentioned, I wanted to dive into this a little more. You mentioned how you're always looking over your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, does that, how does that take its toll? How does that change the way you interact with the world day to day? How you go get your morning coffee? How you go shopping for groceries? How does that affect you in these different ways?
Where I live right now, I pretty much know everybody's car that's there. Even if it's a strange car, I'll know it's a different car. The grocery store, I pretty much know who works there, who doesn't, who can pretend. If a guy's out of place, I'll know it. I'll keep my eyes open more.
So there's a lot of like scanning and cataloging and
I
taking in
won't.
your surroundings. It sounds
That's
like.
right. I won't go to a new place unless I look into it more. So say somebody like wants to go to a place. Oh, let's go check this place out. I'll go there about 3 days in a row in advance, different times, different hours or whatever it is, to just check it out to see if what's going on around there. I did that when I had to meet somebody in the mafia too. If somebody said, "Okay, Joe, we're going to meet Friday over here," well, I'd go there Wednesday and Thursday to see what's the difference between Friday and Saturday. And if it was a week before, I'd go there on the weekends to see if the traffic is different. You'll always do these kind of things. You have to. A lot of people think us Guido guys and a lot of the mafia guys are dumb, but they ain't that dumb. You know what I mean? So, a lot of us got smarts.
I got you.
Yeah.
In the first interview, you mentioned, you talked about how you rose to the ranks and so on. And I wanted to ask you, why is it that you never decided to become a made man, or how close to you when you turned informant were you to becoming? How did that sort of play out? Because you said your father was a made man, correct?
He was. Yeah,
Okay.
he got trained out as he was older, just before he was supposedly killed or whatever.
Right.
He was only a wise guy for a couple of years, maybe. But they liked my father. And my father was around Barney Balamo, who is pretty high up there in the Genovese crime family. He's like an underboss or something, and very well respected. I still think he's very well respected. I'd go anywhere in the country. He's that well made. Matter of fact, years ago I told a story about my father. He did something. He made about, I think it was like 65,000. He did something without, it was on his own. Nobody knew about it. And he went to Barney and he says, he put the money on the table. And Barney looked at him and said, "What's that?" He says, "Well, I want to let you know I did something, and this is what the money I made from it." So my father didn't even hold back. He gave it all to him. Barney said, "You did that on your own?" My father said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, then that's yours. You keep it." He didn't even take a penny from my father,
Wow.
which is almost unheard of. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the kind of guy Barney is, and that's only one of many stories of what kind of a guy he really is. Matter of fact, he's one of the youngest guys, if not the youngest guys to ever be made. Okay,
How old was he?
He was in his 20s, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how respected he was. He speaks fluent Italian and English, and I have to give him a lot of credit because he came to my mother's funeral. Okay, my mother's wake. They never do that, and I think you know why. But I'll tell your viewers if you want.
Yeah.
They never go there because they're always being. Since my father was the way he was and who he was, you got FBI out there taking pictures and seeing who's coming to visit. This way they could say, "Yeah,
It's a
he
good
knows
place
him."
to gather information about associates and who's working with who and who's...
Exactly, because
I
the
got you.
Genovese,
Yeah.
the Genovese crime family is probably the most powerful family around. They've been that way for a long time. The Gambino family was pretty powerful as well, with John Gotti and stuff, but they lost a lot of stuff too. People used to make fun of John Gotti because they said, "Oh, he's flamboyant, he's this, he's that." Listen, you want to know something? Whether he ruined that family or not, in my opinion, not that we're going to talk about John, but he figured, you know something? I'm going to either die in the street or die in prison. I'm going to live the life the way I wanted. So he had $1,500 suits. He did this, he that. If you're making the money he was making every year, why not?
Yeah.
You're going to die anyways or whatever, one way or another, which he did die in prison. He lived his life, So in one way, I kind of understood it. I mean, even though you're supposed to be down low, keep it quiet, it's supposed to be a secret society. But yeah, I didn't really rise through the ranks. I still was only an associate, but I was proposed to be. I was going to be proposed to be a full-fledged member where I was going to get the whole 9 yards, and that was going to happen. I was going to have to get rid of somebody. I was going to have to be in on a murder, which I was going to be.
Is that how they make everybody a made man? You have to kill somebody?
Yeah, two reasons. Even though there's been a couple of people who got straightened out without killing anybody, I believe.
Just for the viewers' clarity, get straightened out means to become a made man, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It becomes you become a full-fledged gangster, soldier in the family.
Okay.
That's how you start.
Gotcha.
You start as an associate or whatever. But anyway, you know, basically you should. The reason you kill somebody because once they know you're able to kill somebody, that your loyalty's really with them. You know, that makes you strong with them, and they can trust you because let's face it, you're gonna go around telling everybody you killed somebody. So that's a big part of it, and then they know that's where your loyalty lies. So that's a big part of it, and I was about to have that happen to me. I did go to my FBI people and let them know that looks like I'm gonna finally have to do work, and I was ready for what happened. Matter of fact, that's why I told you, I think in the last podcast, I'm not sure if I remember you said it, but the FBI gave me permission to do it. And they used it as the guise by telling me that you have to protect your identity. And let's face it, if I'm going to be with somebody and they're going to be pulling the trigger, if I don't pull the trigger, then I get shot.
So they would tell you do whatever you need to do to protect your identity.
That's correct. That's the most important thing. Never tell anybody. Yep.
Right. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, were some of the guys that you grew up with same age? You know, you went to high school with them. Did you watch some of them become made men throughout the years too? And are you still in contact with any of them?
There was some people I knew that they were maybe a year or two older than me. They was around people. I think one guy got straightened out, but at the same time, let me see this water. At the same time, it's like, you know, they I don't know. It's kind of weird, but some people got involved, but not too many people that I knew that I grew up around really did because that's a big commitment. You got to remember your life is not your own anymore. You ever hear that saying, I don't care if your mother's in the hospital, you got to come over here if we call you, and all this kind of stuff? I get it to a certain degree, but come on, man. You mean to tell me you're supposed to be a different family and everything? You don't have respect or regards for the fact that my mother's in the hospital dying and I got to come here because you need me? You know me, tell me you got 20 other guys. Listen, I talked to my, let me just take a sip. I talked about Jerry Chili.
Yeah.
Jerry Chili told me while we were in prison together, okay, he says, listen, Joe, he says, when I get out of this bid, he says, those guys, if they ask me to do any work, I'm going to say, listen, bro, I did enough time. I proved myself. He did probably more than half his life in prison, okay? He said, I did enough work. Use one of the younger guys now. Don't be using me. That's the kind of guy Chili was, okay? And not because he was afraid to do it or anything, but I mean, the guy's already put in his time. I mean, this is the reason why I always I refer to like the Tulsa King and all of these things, because Jerry was right. What are you going to use this guy for? I remember there was a scene in The Sopranos where Burt Young, who I met in real life too, the guy that played in Rocky and everything like that, he was his wife's brother.
Right.
They used him in The Sopranos, but the guy was on his deathbed. He wanted to do something because he wanted to die that way. I think he had some emphysema or whatever he was dying from. He died after he killed the kid. So that was a different kind of a situation, and that I could understand. But this guy's old. He did more than half his life in prison. You want to kill somebody now? Get a young guy. Get a guy that's coming up to prove himself.
Right.
You know. So this is what I'm trying to say. They use you till they can suck everything out of you, and then when you go away to prison, they forget about you. Now, I would have to refer to Dominic on this. I don't know if this is true or not, but there was supposedly Joe Messina, the guy who ratted the boss of the Bonanno family. He had said we're going to start putting things aside, like money aside, for people who go away. for their family and this kind of thing like that. And I don't know if that's true or not. I heard that, and I forget where I heard it, but we'll refer to Dominic about that if when I get a chance to ask him. I keep forgetting to ask him.
So in the first interview, also you talked about how the mafia's newer methods have shifted to less conspicuous forms of essentially the same thing they've always been doing, loan sharking, and now they just try to do things more legally. Can you expand on that and tell me sort of how what's the mafia getting into nowadays?
Oh yeah, they'll get into any kind of legitimate business. Listen, most people get into in legitimate business. Sometimes they can run into trouble. Well, who do they see? Maybe somebody knows somebody, they get a connection, so they'll go to somebody to get help. Once you get help from the mafia guys, you're in bed with them and that's it. You never get out of it.
Right.
But they'll go into like stocks. They'll have some people who are trading, or some people who are accountants.
Really?
Oh, sure. There was one guys, I think they were connected to the Bonanno family too. They were making hundreds of $1,000s a year, easily, on what they would call, I guess, inside trading or whatever, or they knew they had some inside tips on that kind of stuff. They're into real estate. They're into legitimate pharmaceutical. Matter of fact, there was, I think even, I don't know if maybe a lot of viewers don't remember, the Frank Perdue, back in those days, they were involved with him too. They didn't know it, but he knew it.
Right.
Anything legitimate they can get into, because it gets harder and harder. Oh yeah, I'll tell you what, like this here. You probably, most people probably know, you can't go with cash to a car dealership and buy a car outright cash. Well, they put a stop to that, the government, because in the 80s, back in those days when there was a lot of even more heavy drug dealing going on, these drug dealers would go in there with all kinds of cash and put it in there and buy brand new Mercedes or whatever they were buying. They put a stop to that. Well, it sounds good, like they did the right thing, the government. Yeah, thank you, we did the right thing. But who'd you really hurt? You hurt the car dealerships. They don't want you to hide any money, because that's why you can't even deposit more than $600 in the bank now, because they want to keep track of every dollar you make.
Right.
So the government tries to make it harder. See, what it is I'll tell you how they get away with, and I'll say about this to the government, and I'll go back to the mafia in a second. The government, what they do is they have ways of hiding their money and doing all the stuff you can't really tell what they got, and they try to legitimize their money too. But because of the government, it's a lot easier for them to do it than it is the mafia to do it.
Right, yeah.
Because these guys in the mafia, some of them got millions of dollars. Wherever the hell it is, who knows? But, people can do, the mafia got body shops, laundromats, anything to legitimize their money. Because you can't have a big house and then say I only make 10, 25, 30, 40, 50, $100,000 a year and live in a mansion. You can't. You have to do it in a certain way.
Right.
So they do have to change with the times. But the government puts these laws out. How they were able to get away with putting the laws out is because they already have their money hidden. Now they just make it harder for you. See, a lot of rich people I've always come across don't want you to be next to them. They don't want you to be rich with them. They want to be rich, brag about what they got while you're still struggling. Okay? Just like the illegal immigrants that come over here. As soon as they sent them up to Martha Vineyards, within an hour they were all shipped out. Why? You said it was okay for them to come in, but now you don't want to house them? You don't want them to cut your grass? You see, it's all hypocritical on both sides of the aisle. Okay? Right. So, but they do change with the times, to answer the question, and that's why some of the younger generation, like me, I'm old-fashioned in a lot of ways, so I won't know how to do things on computer. But now you got a guy that wants that kind of life, or they're going to make more money because they can do a few things under the radar.
Right.
That's how they get it.
I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, what? One thing that I'm very interested in is that when they would make all this illegal money, what are the different methods they would use to clean the money, or like to legitimize that income?
Various ways, like I said, through the legitimate businesses, because unless they're really after you, nobody's going to sit out. They could have a guy sit out there and clock how many guys go in and out of the laundromat. So you could say the laundromat went from making $25,000 a year, now it's making $150,000 a year. Gotcha. So they'll be like, wow, that's a lot of loads of laundry,
Yeah.
They also have legitimate automobile places, any which way they can clean it. So it's almost like if you have a fence. So when you steal something, so if you steal $100,000 worth of merchandise, you can get maybe $2, $3, on each thing. Like in other words, you got $100,000, somebody will give you $25,000, and then that's all you'll get, or
Right.
50,000, depending on how good the guy is in your relationship with him. But any way they can to clean the money. There's just so many legal ways too. Look, they got accountants under their belt. An accountant know how to fraud the government.
Right.
Matter of fact, I think it's actually kind of funny because I remember everybody said when Donald Trump was running the first time and he was with Hillary Clinton and she called him a thief for not paying taxes or doing this, and he says, that's right, I do what I can. I use the same laws you use. Why don't you change the laws? You've been in politics all these years. You never change the laws. You know why you don't change the tax laws? Because you're using them too. You
And so is
and
everybody
all your
else.
phrases, and so is everybody else, of course. I mean, it's so obvious though, but nobody says anything to it because the rich people, don't say nothing.
Right. So when people around you first started figuring out that you were involved with these guys, did you start to kind of lose friendships, lose relationships, women, family? Did people look down on you for getting involved in this type of stuff?
To be honest with you, it's quite the opposite.
Really?
Oh yeah. People, I don't know if I said it in the last podcast, but there was girls that came up to me who got beat up by their boyfriends, and they wanted me to help them. You can use your imagination on what they wanted me to do.
Right.
Guys came up to me and wanted the girl that broke their heart taken care of. I had a friend of mine, I won't say his name either because he's a good guy too. Well, he was married, he had a nice daughter, and he called me up. He found out his wife, or he assumed his wife was cheating on him. He called me up right away. Joe, I need your help. I said, what happened? He said to me, oh, my wife, I think she's with this guy, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, take it easy, relax, talk to me. What's going on? He says, you think you can get one of your guys to follow her or something? I said, we'll take care of that. I says, you sure? You're positive? He says, yeah, Joe. And he gave me some scenarios, and it sounded like that she was doing something. So I asked him, I says, if you get divorced or anything, would you take care of your daughter still and everything? Oh, yeah, Joe. I think she was like at that time maybe 10 or 12, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. I said, well, let me ask you another question. I says, and this is important. Is the house still under your father's name? He went, yeah, Joe, but I'm telling you that I said, look, she's probably doing everything with this guy that she does with you and maybe more. Don't worry about that now. I says, is the house you said is still under your father's name? He said, yes. I said, well, let me explain something to you. It's better to be heartbroken with the money than without the money. And he got quiet on the phone. He goes, what? I says, it's better to be heartbroken with the money than without the money. He goes, I never thought of that, Joe. I said, that's why you called me. I said, because I understand you're worried about her doing this and doing that, and I get it, and it hurts. But we'll have her followed, and just let me know what's what. And so I had my guy follow her. Mm-hmm. After that, whatever he did with it was his own business. If he got divorced or not, I think he still stayed with her.
What'd the guy find that followed her?
I don't remember now. It's been a long time.
Yeah, gotcha. So let me ask you, Joe, was there any areas where you guys would do business back in those days where the cops wouldn't even go in because they were afraid to deal with you guys? Was there anything like that?
If it was a particular bar, most of the cops wouldn't go in there.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, don't forget too, there's police on the payroll too.
Right.
There's always going to be that. Listen, we have to have somebody that's going to give us a little phone call if they're coming. Like my cousin and my, well, they're really both my cousins, but because he was older than me, I called his father my uncle. And both of them are gone now, so I can say their name. My cousin George and my cousin Pat, both of them, last name is Patty. They had a number store, and we had the guys on the, when they were going to go in there and bust the place up. Now they had a deli connected to it too. So once in a while, somebody would get a sandwich and play the numbers at the same time. So we had somebody to call if there was going to be a bust. And so we had ways to get the numbers and the paperwork all out of there. As a matter of fact, my father had 2 number stores in Mount Vernon. And there was a guy there, he ran that town in Mount Vernon. And so my father had to get permission from him. And and then he had 2 number stores too, so he had that kind of protection
Did
too.
he have to pay any kind of vig to him for having a store in his
Oh
town?
yeah, you got to give a piece of the action. You always got to give a piece. So it's like what I told you about Michael Francis, which he told him stories himself. All that money he was making, he kicked it up to his people, and it's always that way. Even if it's somebody else's territory or anything. Listen, everybody wants to make money. So if you've got a nightclub or something like that, and it's in this one location where there's a couple of different people, then everybody gets a piece. As a matter of fact, my father, in the garment district in Manhattan, there was the Gambino family. I believe it was the Lucchese and the Genovese family. There was some discrepancy about who was the money wasn't getting divided evenly or whatever. But since my father knew a lot of these different people, they called him down there and they said, let's get Joe in there, and so he was able to actually put everybody at peace, like at the mind. Like in other words, he was able to make sure everybody was happy. They all trusted him, and he did the right thing, and so
Right.
everybody got a piece. But like I said, they won't go into most places. And the mafia wants to feel safe about talking about things. Matter of fact, look how they bugged John Gotti. They went into the club, they bugged this whole club, they did this, but they couldn't get him because he had the back door and he went upstairs into the old lady's apartment.
Wow.
But then somebody, told that he was up there, and then they finally were able to bug that apartment, and that's how they got him on the wire. But you got to be careful when you're talking places. Let's face it, and then especially about murders. Nobody talks about murders and stuff that you did. Once it's done, you don't ever mention that again. Yeah, that's just the way it is. You don't, and that's a rule that everybody knows. Anybody that's in that life.
So why did you never wear a wire? Why would you were I was doing some reading online and they're adamant, in several different articles that you refused to wear a wire every time.
I never wore a wire because I didn't. I didn't want to get caught with it. Obviously, I mean that's there, but I never needed to. And the FBI bragged about the fact that I never wore a wire. I think the article you might be referring to is I was reluctant to wear the wire against my co-defendant on my last bid, which was the murder for hire.
Right.
And I thought about it, and I said, okay, I will wear it, because I was so confident in the fact that this was a bullshit case, and the fact that there was no murder ever going to be committed. I said, you know something, I'll wear it. And that was the only one and only time I wore a wire. And sure enough, I did wear the wire. We talked like they asked me to talk. I gave all the clues that what the FBI wanted to know, and it turned out to be nothing. That was proven in court.
And it cleared both of your names.
It cleared the both of us. That's correct.
Right.
Tony now, he's passed away, my co-defendant. He was only about a year older than me, but he died, I think, a couple of years ago. But, yep, it cleared us. And that's why I was that one time I wore it. I mean, look, let me tell you something. When the FBI arrested me on the second bid that I did, when the informant shopping thing, you know what they said to me? I'm going to show you how dumb the FBI really is. I'm going to really prove it to you right now. I have never said this on any podcast, I don't believe. So the FBI asked me, Joe, we're going to give you money to loan out in the street. Obviously, I knew about loan sharking, so it was
They
easy.
gave you money to loan shark with?
They wanted to give me money. And I'm going to tell you, I said, okay, you want me to loan money out in the street? I said, sure. I says, you give me the money, I'll loan it out. I says, but let me ask you a question. What happens when the guy don't want to pay me? Am I not supposed to beat him up or do what I got to do to get the money back, or get some compensation for him, or get his laptop, or put a deed on his house, give me the part of the deed, or get his title to the car? What am I supposed to do when you don't want to pay me? You know what they said? Nothing, because they didn't know how to answer me, because they can't
Right.
tell you.
What's the right answer there?
That's right. They can't tell you. You got to do what you got to do, Joe. You know what I mean? I have to still keep my strut. Listen, you want to be this great undercover guy, but yet I can't act like a real gangster. What's wrong with you people? They had me call up a friend of mine, Pat Lombardo, from prison, and they says, you talk about this with him and this with him. I said, we don't talk on the phone about this stuff. What's wrong with you? Sure
They
enough,
don't know how, they don't know the...
they think
Yeah.
they know.
Right.
They think they're smart. So, well, out of what was going on, I called him. And I'm glad that I did. Because Pat said, I know they're recording me right now. And that's it. It's all the transcripts. It's all on the recorded tape. He knew. That's why I laughed at these guys. I said, wait, I was missing for 4 days when they wanted to let me back out in the street. Because I said I would work with these guys.
Right.
I told them I'd work with them only because I wanted to get the hell out of prison. I wasn't going to do shit for them. They were nothing like I used to work with when I was working with Vinny. But I said, I'm missing for 4 days, guys. What's wrong with you? They said, just tell them you met some girl and you ran away to Atlantic City. I said, that sounds pretty good for a movie, but I'm not in the movie. This is the real life. Everybody that knows me knows I would never do that. If I met a girl, I just took her back to the house and then dropped her off. I mean, really? Come on. But this is how they think. They think it's like they're still living in TV land.
Well, their life isn't on the line, so you don't really come up with good excuses when it's not you're on the hot seat, do you?
They're still reading books about me, the guy that's really in them. Okay? They're fantasizing. They don't know. But yet they want you to live by these stringent rules. Oh, you can't do this. You can't do anything. Then how was I supposed to get all the information I did? How was I supposed to be acting like a tough guy and I can't raise my hands?
Well, you had to break a few rules and the FBI was okay with you doing that. Which
sure, because
that how you will, but
they didn't care how they got the information.
Right.
You know what they said to me? Why didn't you tell us about this guy, Mike, who, you're going to have him whack this guy? I said, why should I? Nothing was going to happen. Nothing was going to happen. Why should I tell you? It's a waste of time. You didn't want to know about a guy like him. You wanted to know about gangsters. And they didn't like that answer. They want to know everything. They want to know when you went to the bathroom. It's worse. They're worse than Facebook.
So what was the first conversation where the switch flipped, where now the FBI is actually going after you rather than working with you?
When I got arrested, I tell you, I was shocked.
You didn't know it was happening at all.
No.
It came out of nowhere, and it was false charges, like you said.
The guy I was working with was Mike Trombetta, that I was introduced to a couple of years prior to this because Vinny was going to get ready to retire. And so I said, I look, hindsight now, I didn't know. I would have walked away when Vinny walked away. I should have said, okay, Vinny, you're retiring, so am I, okay? But I didn't do it. I wasn't smart enough to think that I could walk away. That was my fault. I'm not blaming anybody. It's my fault. I should have walked away. I would have never gotten this kind of trouble because who cared? I had I had $1 million home. I had $500,000 in the bank, about $60,000 in my safe. I had about $100,000 worth of jewelry. I had a car that was I had a brand new Escalade that was prepaid for 2 years, and I had a job waiting for me in the sanitation department in Nurse Shell, okay, which I was been making $90,000 a year to start, okay, but I didn't do it. You know whose fault that is? Mine. But I still worked for them, and then 3 months after he retired, I get arrested. Doesn't that sound kind of funny? You mean 18 years I didn't get arrested? In 18 years, all the information I gave him.
Your FBI handler, after 3 months after he got arrested, you're saying?
After 3 months after he retired, I get arrested.
Excuse me, yeah, right.
And you mean to tell me I was believable all those 18 years, but now I'm not believable now? I told them, there's nothing going to happen here. You guys are arresting the wrong guy. What's wrong with you? They said they didn't care, but that's because they wanted me to work with them. They didn't care. They made up this whole thing. Oh, don't get me wrong. It wasn't made up totally.
Right.
But they had a guy who was this informant against me. This guy's whole record was shit. Mine whole was good, and yet they took his word over mine.
Well,
doesn't that sound like the government now?
It was convenient for it. They'll do whatever's most convenient.
It's a joke, and I beat them. Right in courtroom. I beat them in the courtroom, legitimate. You know what my lawyer told me? And I don't know if anybody knows my courtroom scene. You know what my lawyer told me before I got on the stand? Because no attorney would ever tell you to take the stand because, they cringe. They don't want you to take the stand. You know what my lawyer told me? Because I took the stand. I was on the stand for a day and a half.
Oh, okay? Wow.
You know what he told me? Just talk to the jury like you're talking in your living room. He didn't tell me to say this, to say that. Never gave me anything like that. He said, just tell your story, Joe.
It says a lot about your innocence.
Because that's right, it does, and I appreciate you saying that. You know how the courtroom is here, the people are out there, and the jury's to your left? I didn't face them. I turned my chair, and I had my clear glasses on. Okay? I wanted the jury to see my face, to look in my eyes, not to hear a story. I wanted them to see and know what was going on in here.
Right.
Okay? And they did. And guess what? Not guilty. And that's why the FBI even hates me more.
Right.
Matter of fact, I had a $20 million lawsuit against them. And you know what they did in this, what they call a summary judgment? You go in front of these judges. They knew I would win my lawsuit because all I had to do was tell the truth again, just like I did in my murder trial, okay? They shot it down because it's a joke. Summary judgment is you present the judges who are all working for the government and see if you have enough evidence to warrant to go to sue them. Well, if you're against my brother or my sister and you tell me, hey, they did this to me and that to me, so I still don't believe you. We think I'm going to give up my brother and sister? They all work for the government. They get the same paycheck. Do you think they're going to go for me? They knew that I won at my trial, and they knew that I would win the lawsuit too, okay?
So they never even took the case?
They shot it down, got kicked out of court. Otherwise, I'd be someplace else nice and quiet. And I don't even know if I would be doing, and no offense, I wouldn't be doing probably podcasts and stuff.
Right.
Because I don't want the exposure. I'm not looking to have fame and fortune, all this kind of stuff.
Well, when a wire from the U.S. government hits your bank account for $20 million, I wouldn't think of doing podcasts either.
Exactly. I just wanted to just go away and, listen, I have a hard time. I think you asked me how it affected my life. Professionally was one thing. I mean, you got to remember, I was risking my life every day and every night. My attorney asked my agent, is Joe's life ever in danger? He said all the time. I was called down to meetings, or sometimes I would have to meet people. I didn't know if they ever found out if I was cooperating with the government, but I still went. Okay.
And that takes, excuse my language, that takes balls.
I don't know. I think about it, and I talk to my therapist about it, and I don't even know how I did it. Looking back now, I don't even know how I did it. I don't know what was in me. I just say, how did I do it? I don't know if it was about survival. I don't know if it was about my father. I don't know. It was something inside of me, the determination I wanted to know about who killed my father. I was willing to go to that length, to be willing to die to find out what happened to my father. And that's why I'm in therapy, because I can't even believe the stuff I did. First of all, I never want to be labeled as a rat or cooperator or anything like that. Like I said, I've got friends out there they'll never say it. They can't say it. And I don't blame them, that I protected. I never gave any information about them. And there was also my friend Dominic. There's some things I never said about him. Okay? Because they don't deserve that information.
Right.
And there's some things I'll probably maybe more than some things I'm going to the grave with that nobody's ever going to know.
So we'll kind of wrap things up here with our last question.
Okay.
It seems like everybody who comes out of this life ends up in jail or dead. So let me ask you.
Or cooperated?
or as a cooperator.
Yeah.
So what is the in the mafia's eyes, what is the legitimate way out, to the way to retire, how does it end, organically for these guys without being dead or in jail?
It's very hard to just walk away. I mean, like they had Joe Bonanno that walked away, but then he wrote a book, and then Mayor Giuliani at that time, he wasn't the mayor yet, he went after him because of the stuff he wrote in the book. I don't know if it's really that possible to step down, because it might be possible.
So you're saying there is no out. There is no way out.
It will pretty much either go to jail for the rest of your life, you die, get killed, you die of natural causes, which
might not even be natural.
Right, exactly. Or you cooperate, and then you wish you died. Because there's a part of everybody that cooperated doesn't like what they did.
Of course. Those guys were your friends at the end of the day, but,
Exactly.
Your dad was, family's one thing.
My father wouldn't be proud of what I did today. Of course not, I know that. Don't you think that's disappointing? Everybody in there, every son or child always wants to make their parents proud, because you can hear from your friends all day long that you did a good job, or wow man, holy shit, that's pretty cool, and it feels good. But there's nothing like when your parent looks at you and shows you, gives you that look of like they're so happy, they're so proud of you, and that goes beyond the norm.
Right.
Because there's something about it. These are the people who you love and trust. I mean, you don't ever think your family's ever going to go against you. Look, my mother and father probably would have died for me. Do you think I could say that mostly about any of my friends? Of course not.
Well, Joe, I think we had a really good episode again today. You told a lot of interesting stories. I'm very happy to be able to have you back on. We'd love to have you on again, obviously, sometime soon, whatever, at your leisure.
It's been my pleasure.
For everyone watching, thank you so much. If you liked today's video, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe to stay up to date with every podcast that we release. We should be releasing every Sunday. And that's about it. Thank you guys for watching, and bye-bye.